Hey everybody, Courtney here from the Office of Student Involvement. Today, as part of BDC Live, we are featuring stories with different students around DePaul talking about their out-of-classroom experience. So right now, I'm joined by Wesley from the Student Government Association. Wesley, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. So hello everyone, my name is Wesley. I am a junior at DePaul. I study international studies and German. I'm involved with Student Government Association, as Courtney said. I'm the Executive Vice President of Operations, and one of my main focuses is, and what I'll be talking about today a lot, is sustainability and the Sustainability Ad Hoc Committee that we have in SGA.
That's great. So Wesley, let's start there. Let's dive a little bit more into that committee. So how about you give our viewers a little bit of an overview of what you all are doing in the realm of sustainability through SGA?
Yeah, so we're up to a lot of different things. We're obviously, as Student Government Association, working with students. We have a lot of students involved with the committee, but there's been meetings constantly that I've been having with faculty and staff, kind of talking about ways to improve DePaul's overall sustainability profile, whether that be our website, improving our website, creating websites to kind of promote our sustainability, whether that be on campus. Right now we're virtual, so that's kind of been something we've been focused less on. Surveying students, we've been trying to figure out what the pulse is for students and what they want to do with sustainability. And we've been up to just a whole lot of things and hopefully pushing forward sustainability in good directions.
Yeah, so before we go on a little bit, I'm curious if you can talk a little bit more about what you're hearing from students, like where the interest is, and really why SGA decided to bring this to the forefront this year.
Yeah, we did a lot of surveying, kind of getting a lot of input from students in the fall, and we found a lot of students, unsurprisingly for me, cared about sustainability a lot. They were very much so actually interested in one of the biggest things that our community's been pushing for, which is a sustainability plan at DePaul. That's been something that a lot of students, on our survey, I think there was like almost 92% of students who responded who were like, we want a sustainability plan. And I think a lot of students nowadays are also getting interested in things like having land acknowledgement statements. That's something that we are very much interested in, and the impact that kind of the university and students have on Indigenous peoples and how they have impacted and how they've been impacted by our actions. So I think those are probably two of the biggest things that students have been really interested in this year.
Yeah, so obviously this year it's been very different for your organization to meet. I think, particularly for our alumni who are watching and, other people who have been on campus, in a normal year, all of your meetings would be taking place in person. And obviously throughout the pandemic, that's had to shift. So I'm curious, Wesley, if you can talk a little bit about how SGA and the Sustainability Ad Hoc Committee has shifted to this virtual environment.
Yeah, so all of our meetings are online now, which means there is kind of this adjustment to that, both how do you hold a virtual meeting, how to get people to participate in these meetings, whether people, a lot of people are shy, or you have that unmuting problem where it's like someone unmutes at the same time and you're both like, oh, who should go first? Raising hands, there's always that. I think there's communication where it's like figuring out when people can meet, when people want to meet, because a lot of people, myself included, almost consider like nowadays my work schedule or when I'm free for a meeting is so open-ended as compared to before, and it's a lot different. It's a lot harder to get people to like also show up to a lot of these meetings. It's been a lot of changes, and kind of even getting people, when's a good time when people aren't Zoom fatigued and actually show up to the meetings having energy to participate. That's a huge thing too. Or for me on Thursdays I have classes like almost all day, so I really don't want to throw another Zoom meeting on Thursdays. But if that's what everyone's schedule works, then perhaps that's just what I have to go with, and then I don't have as much energy on Thursdays, whatever it may be. But I think there's so many different things that I've kind of had to learn over this, as being a leader in the organization, learning throughout COVID about how, and even as COVID has shifted, students getting used to Zoom, getting used to the platform, but also kind of getting more exhausted from the platform. So there's plenty of different issues, and a lot of them I'm just continuously learning, where I'm like, okay, that's something new that hasn't come up. Guess I learned that now. So it's a lot of fun in some ways, but it's also can be frustrating, can definitely be huge struggles.
Yeah. One of the things I've talked with a lot of students about is, in all reality, like what you all are doing now, and when you go into the business world, this is going to be how a lot of your work interactions are, especially as we more increasingly are part of this global society. So I think in that regard, it's been a helpful experience for students, but I mean, you listed a ton of the struggles. So I'm curious, from a student perspective, how do you continue to motivate your peers, and how do you, continue to build potential community through this virtual environment? What are some of the ways that you've been doing that, or SGA or the ad hoc committee?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing and the simplest thing that I do is one, being genuine, but doing that in like ways of like in SGA we always do formation, and like doing those simple like icebreaker questions that can even just be, even if they're not super serious or like you'll learn that much about the person, just funny ones. I love doing them today. In like our committee meeting, we did one that was just like, what's your favorite CTA line? And like that was also, I think, a good way to connect us also to like the world that still exists. Like the CTA still exists, even if we might not be riding it to go to campus to meet each other. That's still something that like is on our minds, and still something that I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about all these really incredible train lines. Dang, I want to go on all these right now. Can't wait till this is over. So I think that's one of the biggest ways, is getting people to like smile in those ways, and getting people to kind of motivated, even at the very least, like having a lot of energy at the beginning of the meetings by asking those questions, and then kind of going to the things that might be kind of Zoom fatigued out from. So that's kind of the biggest way, at least that I like to do so. I think it's fairly successful. I hope at the very least it gets me energized. So I hope it gets other people too. But
yeah, I have to ask, what's your favorite CTA line?
Today was the Brown line.
Yeah.
I love the Brown line. I went on the Brown line earlier this week. I had to like go downtown for something, and it's great. It's also not too busy right now, so it's like compared to the Red line, which I normally take for work, like it's less busy, so I feel safer. And then it's also just, it's a little slower than the Red line, which is like nice if you're like going on it specifically to ride it, because you kind of get more time to take in the city. So I like it for those reasons. But I love the Orange line too. Orange line is super nice. So it's hard to have a line that I don't like. Perhaps Red line because I ride it too much, but yeah.
Yeah. I think Brown line's my favorite too, just because I love looking out the window and seeing like especially when you get down to the loop, like brown and purple. Like honestly, I think I might be content just like, going around it, especially like when things with the pandemic subside and I'm not as nervous about social distancing. But yeah, that's great. That's great. So, obviously in this virtual environment, I'm curious to hear if you've had any successes or if there's any things that are actually working better for you all in this virtual environment.
Yeah, I mean, we've had quite a few. I think those surveys I was talking about, those have probably been some of the hugest successes, and very much surprises to me. Those surveys ended up they were run through IRMA, Institutional Research and Market Analytics, under like the student pulse surveys. And those ended up having, even though we're in this virtual environment, or perhaps because they're in the virtual environment, we ended up getting more responses to those than they had ever gotten before, which was in many ways a big surprise to me. I thought it would be hard to engage students because they might just be like, not wanting to respond to things because they're on their phone all day. But that was probably one of our biggest successes. And I think even just the committee in general we have had through our entire time, like almost 10, 11 students who have been part of it, which is it's really cool to see how many students are getting engaged with it. So I'd say, I mean, even though engagement looks so much different, it can be really, people are coming out here and there. It's definitely, those have probably been some of our successes in actually like engaging students and getting them to respond to things. There was, especially around those surveys, there was a lot of dialogue on like social media about like what can be done with sustainability at DePaul, like what are suggestions that students have, and not just like, what I as an SGA member think the university should do. What is the rest of the students saying? Like what are things that the campus can, be more green, or what things can DePaul do better? And I think those have been definitely some successes. Meeting with students, I think we've been really successful. And I think even just, those are the biggest things, is actually getting students to respond. I think it's really great.
Yeah. Well, that's spectacular. Well, Wesley, as we end out our time together here, I'm curious if there's anything else you want our viewers to know.
Yeah. So if you want to keep, the biggest thing is probably keeping up what we're doing sustainability. We have a website, go.depaul.edu/sustainability. You can also follow social media. We have DePaul at DePaul SGA. We are constantly posting on there about our GB meeting agendas, and just anything we're pushing. Sustainability's on there occasionally. So those are probably the two biggest things I'd love to share with the community.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time here today to tell our viewers with BDC Live about your experience. To our viewers, be sure to check out our interviews throughout the day, but we will be back a little bit later with more stories. Bye-bye, everybody.